Hi, this is Joseph Williams, son of John Williams, and you are watching the Nerf Herder Council.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to a special Wednesday edition of WTF Friday. So that's right, it's WTF Friday, but it's a Wednesday, so we got WTF Wednesday. I'm AJ. I actually do have a co-host tonight that we'll be bringing on in a little bit here, but just wanted to catch you up a little bit. We are in the middle of building our Not Lego ATST. So this is a fan-designed kit, not by Lego, and it's made of pieces that are not made by Lego. So just like most good ideas in the Star Wars podcasting universe, our show is a knockoff. So our Lego kit itself is a knockoff. Works for me. The format of the show is pretty loose. Anything you guys want to talk about, let's bring it up. I figured tonight we can talk about some Star Wars Celebration. We could talk about some Star Trek if my co-host is so inclined. And without further ado, I think we should bring him on. Joe, you ready?
What have you done to yourself?
Oh, I just like to grow little pearls in my eyelid. You know, I'd like to tell a good story about how I was rafting in West Virginia and got hit with a paddle or something. But no, I survived that and just my eyelid got angry anyway. It's pretty gory, right?
You know, styes are not the worst thing you could have done on a WTF Wednesday. You not only want to talk about Star Trek, which up until now really has been a sensitive subject on the Nerf Herder Council, but you called me.
Yeah, well, after so many mentions, you chimed in the chat. We didn't really have a choice anymore.
You're right, because I can't help it if JT and Steve don't want to talk about Star Trek, because it's all good. You know, one of the coolest things you guys did was you went full Nerf Herd. That's the name of your show. You guys went full nerd podcast, which now that I say that out loud, when are you guys going to start talking about Nerf guns on the show?
We'd have to get some Nerf guns first, and I've already got an eye injury, so let's hold off on that for a little while. Okay?
Yeah, you'll be fine, dude. It's foam darts, it's little balls. It'll be fine.
Okay. Do you know how much those things cost?
Yes. Do you know how much they cost to mod after you spend them? I keep hearing that from you, and yet the show is still here. You're still talking about nerdy stuff. You're still talking about Star Wars. You guys are about to go to Celebration, and I'm just here because, you know, I got an offer to talk about Star Trek, and nobody ever asks me to do anything except Dan. He asks me to edit shows all the time. It's so good. I love my job. I don't know if I've said that recently because, you know, we make a sweet metal podcast. We talk about all the metal things. So I feel like between the nerd stuff and the metal stuff, we've got something going on here, AJ. What do you think?
I feel like there's some synergy there, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know nearly as much about the music thing. You got to talk to John about that, but...
No, I don't. I don't have to talk to John. I mean, I've talked to John. Did you invite John to the show?
No, he's not really welcome. He just kind of barges in whenever he wants.
What the fuck is this?
See?
Oh, hi, John. How's it going? Don't leave me alone with a soundboard. I will modify it. My co-host is in the chat right now, actually. He really doesn't want me to start playing some of these clips.
Well, that's the best part is, you know, we really don't actually need John on the show. You've got the best parts already anyway.
I've got the parts that we all know and love, and he just won't do unless he's prompted. I'm not going to say which platform we're logged into right now, but if I was logged into my side of it, you know, I could display some GIFs. I could make him uncomfortable. I might have a way to do that anyway that I didn't tell anybody about. Surprise!
Well, I'll tell you, thanks to your soundboard, we can already get John's opinion on any of the new Star Trek that's come out.
Oh, come on!
Yeah.
Yeah.
I believe that and the clip you previously played.
Yes.
What the fuck is this?
There we go. Now we know John's opinion of Strange New Worlds.
Man, Strange New Worlds is so good, though. Have you gotten into it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I love it. I've been waiting so long for an episodic Star Trek show to come back.
I'm having a hard time getting into it. Obviously, it's only got a couple episodes out, but I think we've gotten to a point where we're old school fans of Star Trek want submarines in space. That's it. I'm not the biggest fan of Discovery. I've tried. I'm not a huge fan of the action movie Star Trek, especially in an episode form. I feel like the older series had a style It was put the camera in the room and watch the stuff happen. Now we're following everybody running as fast as they can because they're going to shoot the Borgs in the face. But the newer Strange New Worlds, I'm worried because we still can't get a Star Trek without camera lens flare. And we don't need that. Why do we need the lens flare?
Style, yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be, though. We have a show called Picard, and it looks like Discovery. Why wouldn't that just be Next Generation as flat, cheesy as possible?
That is a problem. I get why they're trying to like unify the look between the shows, so it's like one cohesive continuity. But at the same time, you're right. Like trying to see Next Generation related anything with this new like JJ verse looking aesthetic with all the lens flares and all the modern visuals and stuff. It's jarring. I'm not a fan of that. Like Picard is not on my radar, and Discovery is, but yeah, we'll see. We'll see.
I'm giving it a chance. You want to make some stuff? That's kind of the reason you're here.
Doing this, yeah.
Yeah.
So let me give a quick update on what we've got going on so far. So I made a few updates to the existing build here. So these kits never come with any printed parts. So I did swap in through a service called Bricklink. I did swap in a few printed parts that are actually Lego. So we got that all set up now. So we have actual like vents on the back. So this is not an entirely not Lego kit anymore. This is actually some Lego. So I had to like go and buy an actual Lego piece for that because they didn't provide that with the kit. These dishes on the side here were dark gray supplied. I've got those over here actually. So we had dark gray. I swapped out for the proper light gray. And a few more printed parts that were needed. So we're still this far in. We've got no roof, and we need to get like a neck and some legs on this thing. But I'm going to go ahead and build on that now. The one thing I noticed though is that this thing is fragile as hell. This thing fell apart so badly when I was just trying to reconstruct it with the new parts. I hope it doesn't fall apart on camera. We'll see. We're just going to set that aside for a second and get to building.
I mean, if it does, you can do episode 3.5, right? Where you have to put it back together.
Oh God, I hope not. I hope not, dude. I was really like, what I want to do is I want to get this done tonight. One, because I said so. And then that also means that I can get on the next thing that's already waiting to be built next month. So we can get on a more conversation. But yeah, so not too many roof pieces to build the roof on this guy. So I'll get to building on this. And,
see, I don't want to speak blasphemy on your stream, but yeah, I wasn't the biggest Lego kid. I've definitely built things with Legos, but I was more of a Connects guy. I don't know if that disqualifies me from co-hosting a live stream, but you could build things that moved better than you could with Lego. It's not my fault.
True. At least you didn't say constructs. That stuff was crap.
Ooh, no. Go buy some Tinker Toys, please.
Yeah, exactly. So, okay, so you've been watching New Trek.
Been watching New Trek, finished season 2 Picard, have been rewatching after purchasing the entire Next Generation on Blu-ray because everybody complained about how the effects were updated. They went in and rescanned the original negatives, so it's actually kind of cool to see new scans. And don't get me wrong, they definitely redid some things. Nothing that you really can get upset about. There's only so much you can do with an old VHS scan of the crystalline entity. So they apparently remade that from scratch, but the rest of it, for the most part, it's all scans. It looks great. There's 2 scenes in particular I can think of that they just said it. We couldn't find the reels, so these are upscaled DVD copies, and it shows from the noise. And I don't care. I've been watching this stuff on TV on reruns for years. And yes, to my co-host in the chat, yes, I did want Picard to be shot specifically for VHS in 4:3, the old school aspect ratio. If anything, start with that. And then do the expansion thing that you see sometimes when they show old stuff on new movies. It's exactly what I wanted. Nobody didn't want that.
Or like how they like to toggle between like IMAX shots and standard 70mm shots sometimes.
Yeah, they get away with those though. Maybe because I'm blind, I don't notice, but it's like randomly these black bars show up because there's a giant explosion and then everything goes back to the full screen.
Mm-hmm.
Aspect ratios are not a new thing. I hate to say that. We all thought there was only two, 4:3 and 16:9. No, there's been aspect ratios for decades, ever since the beginning of film.
What I love though is that every time TV catches up with a cinematic aspect ratio, then the cinemas get wider.
Yes.
Like eventually, we're just going to have this like sliver across the screen. It's just going to be like 1 inch tall across a 70-inch wide television.
That's why I'm seeing a lot of creatives, people that do graphic design and video editing for days, specifically buy 1610 monitors instead of 16:9. You know what? I don't get it, but then again, I'm not a creative. I just remember buying my first widescreen 16:9 panel and watching all my old DVDs that were 4:3 and not caring because, well, they made this for TV, didn't they?
Oh God, do you remember fighting that where it was like you could set the aspect ratio on the playback and you could also set it on the TV itself? So
yes.
You get this whole confusion between like, do I zoom it or do I set 1 to natural? And yeah.
Dude, it makes some of those old Star Wars laser discs that my co-host has laying around challenging sometimes. See, I brought it back to Star Wars because it's the Nerf Herder Council, right?
It's always Star Wars all the time.
It's always Star Wars.
Nothing but Star Wars.
So you're telling me this design here, this is not an actual Lego set. This is one of the off fan-made 3D printed sets that you can make now apparently because Lego is just something you can make?
Probably not just plain old like Lego like that, but the copyright laws and IP laws in China are very loose. So basically companies just went and made their own clone copies of the bricks. And not a lot of people know this about Lego, but you can actually build more than one thing with the pieces. So if you decide that you just want to build something that Lego didn't tell you to, there's nothing stopping you. So a lot of people go and they take that and they actually make other things besides what Lego tells you to.
I mean, that's what's great about Lego, right? You just pick the pieces that you need and clip them together and say, well, this is how it is. See, I'm watching the plans change and I realized that everybody else can't see this. So this is what we're working with.
Yeah, it's a little bit difficult because we got too many cameras running and StreamYard won't let us show everything at once.
Dear StreamYard, make every input an input, please. And please let me do transitions without sliding into it. It's a cinematic thing. I complain about it all the time with my co-host.
Oh, like we were discussing before we went live, though. One of us is going to get handy with video effects and stuff, and then we'll really have a show.
Oh, yeah.
We'll have the best produced show that nobody watches.
Oh, come on. Everybody watches this show. Didn't you know?
We got 4 simultaneous viewers right now. I think that's a record.
What's going on for simultaneous viewers and everybody that's not here yet? You know you like watching this.
Watch it. Oh, we got a Twitch viewer. Shout out
What's
to Twitch.
going on, Twitch? Are we competing against Steve, though? That's the real question.
I didn't get a notification that he's live tonight, so I don't think so.
I'm going to have to check. You know that.
It depends on if he's done playing Elden Ring or not. I mean, that's really all he does. I don't think he's played a single other game on his channel yet. For those who don't know, we've got Nerf Herder Games, which is the third main Nerf Herder host, Steve. He's running that gig. That's like all him basically. So
that's right. Competing against yourself.
Not even Star Wars. Yeah. Although spoiler alert, I do have a video capture card too, and I do plan on doing some gaming. But probably only stupid old stuff that I'm probably just going to rage quit after like 2 minutes.
You know, depending on how stupid you want to get, I don't want to bring it back to Star Wars, like, that's a theme around here, but I've been trying to get my co-host Dan, who streams games sometimes, to play through the Super Star Wars trilogy, a series that is insanely hard, that he has an unnatural ability for. There are some games I can just sit down and play. Like, I have multiple games because they gave me a controller and, then they walk away, say, it's yours now. But that guy can play Super Star Wars in a way I've never seen. Game is insanely hard and, well, it's way better than A lot of games that have come out since then. Shadows of the Empire was good too. That was actually something I was trying to figure out this week, looking at Star Trek games, because there aren't a lot of good ones.
Yeah, I know Star Trek Online is pretty big and popular. Even gets some shout outs like in the TV shows, actually. Some of the ship designs come directly from the game. But I've never played it, have you?
Not online. I don't get into MMOs very often. I have gotten into them, but I'll be honest, I don't have time to spend every waking hour in the insert name of MMO anymore. I wish I did. If I'm going to play a game, like I think the game I've spent the most time in lately is Back 4 Blood and Borderlands 3. And that's knowing how much time it takes to play them. So that's where I put my time if I'm playing a game like that. But even like, I like any game like that you can just kill some time in. And I think I played the Star Trek game back on 360 after JJ's remake came out. It wasn't very good. It just was not good.
Oh God! And I was so excited for that one because didn't they have like a whole Gorn level or something in there?
Yes, they did. And
Like,
it's hard to make games. I know that. I don't make games, but I know it's hard to make games. But there has to be a point in QA where you say, this isn't ready. It's just not ready.
yeah, I feel like a lot of that stuff comes down to like the studios or the parent company is like, this is our release date. Whatever it's like is how it's going out. Like there is not time for proper QA on these things because a lot of companies are like, screw it. We'd rather just sell it broken.
Could you imagine if that happened with TVs and movies? Like whatever form it's in, release it. Okay.
Yeah, right.
Well, we're going to patch out the incomplete green screen on Patrick Stewart for this scene where they're flying into the insert name of wormhole created by the Borg Queen. Mm-hmm. Spoilers for Picard season 2 if you haven't sat down and watched that. What's your take on that new series? Because the first season was kind of painful, and now it looks like they're just leaning into. Remember Star Trek Next Generation? I remember.
Yeah, right. Actually, I want to talk about that whole like day one patch idea real quick first. Because do you remember the end of season 1 of Picard?
Yes.
And how like the entire fleet of Federation ships were identical. It was literally just like a copy paste for the entire fleet. Like 200 ships show up and they're all the same.
I mean, I thought that's what it was. I happened so quickly that I didn't notice. That was one of those scenes where I feel like they did it at the last second to try and make it look more imposing. And all they had was copy and paste After Effects because we didn't build any other ships. But
you would be exactly right.
There's other ships in the continuity of Star Trek that...
Yeah.
Star Trek is one of those franchises that somewhere there has to be a Star Trek ship generator that they could just use to create new ships and drop it into After Effects, and nobody would notice.
Dude, it's amazing. Like
they have a consistent design.
Star Trek being less popular is that like getting access to the creatives is apparently a lot easier, and they don't protect their secrets nearly as well. There's a YouTube channel called Trek Culture. Are you familiar with Walt Culture on YouTube?
Yes.
Okay, so they've got a Star Trek channel called Trek Culture, and they've been doing interviews lately with a lot of the creatives, and like a lot of the guys doing the VFX work on season 2, for example, they know the people that did the VFX work on season 1, and they freely admitted they're like, we get our ships from like, if Star Trek Online has a high res model of something, then we'll borrow that and upscale it, or we'll make it ourselves if we have to. Or in the case of Picard season 1, literally that shot was like a drop in, and they had like no time. So they literally had like one design that they plucked out of Star Trek Online and just like 200. Here you go. There's your fleet.
That might explain why they were so small. I mean, don't get me wrong. That makes sense. You said, I think, Intrepid, either that or I heard it in my head. There was an entire multiple episodes in Deep Space Nine where when they talked about the Defiant and how it was built specifically to combat the Borg. And then later on in that universe, you can just get in the games or whatever, you can build a Defiant class ship. So It makes perfect sense that you would have a class of ship and you just build more of that. That's fine. But it has to exist. Somewhere there has to be, I need 200 of this ship, give them all unique names and serial numbers because somebody's going to check.
Mm-hmm. So but the fact that like the call goes out and every single ship that shows up happens to be that exact same class. It was like everyone called it, everyone knew it. It was just, hey, we only have one ship, so we just need 200 copies of it. I don't know if you can even see the registry on them. I didn't get into that much detail, but I'm guessing they probably didn't change it.
Somebody will check. It won't be me.
So, by the way, I want to just give a quick little bit of attention here. This is the kind of crap that Lego would never do. This stuff is just sitting here in cracks and crevices, being pinned together by other things, and hoping no one plays with it too rough. This is ridiculous stuff.
Yeah,
but if you want that detail, is what you do.
Yeah,
this is definitely not an ages 8 and up kind of kit.
Yeah, look at this. So this is the stuff about the more complex Lego that I would be so frustrated at right now. Because
Lego would never build anything like this. It does not pass their standards.
Brian Patton's in the chat. He says they rushed Wolverine Origins in theaters without finishing all the special effects because it was leaked online before hitting theaters. I don't think that they could have done anything to those effects to make them look any better because the plot of that movie was absolutely insane and did not make sense. And I don't typically laugh at the first 5 minutes of a movie that's not supposed to be funny, but I did.
Yeah, I'm not really sure if that was a comedy or a tragedy based on how that turned out.
You've seen it, right?
Oh yeah.
So the opening scene of the movie, not even going to play super nerd right now about how Sabretooth and Wolverine are not brothers, but let's go ahead and write this scenario of Sabretooth and Wolverine are brothers. So what you're saying is they have mutant powers. They have the finger claws and the teeth, and Wolverine, when he's a boy, developed these bone claws. I don't see everything all the time, but I've never seen so obviously a small child whose arm, however long it was, has bone claws attached to the wrist that are about 150% the length of his arm. So those stay sticking out, right?
Yeah.
It's little stuff, guys. These are too long. I need you to cut like 6 inches of this off and then stick it back on. Great, that makes more sense. Let's go. And he does the Wolverine run at the camera. It's just it wasn't supposed to be funny, but it's funny.
It's no good.
And
for sticklers to detail, by the way, this piece is just going to stay off because I don't feel like taking this whole thing apart to put it back on again. So sorry, this side's going to be slightly incomplete over here.
And if this was real Lego, it wouldn't be an option to leave that off? Is that what you're saying?
If this was real Lego, it wouldn't have been built so flimsy in the first place. You know, we had a gun turret fall off here too because there's only like one little connection point here.
Ooh.
So it's like hanging on by a thread by design, but it looks really good as long as you don't touch it.
But you have to. How else is this thing going to get put together?
Yeah, like I don't know. It's
somebody designed this in CAD, didn't they? Or
yeah, that's where a lot program. Of this. Yeah, a lot of this looks like that, where it's like, it seems good in a 3D space, but not in reality. Okay, so we've got a completed head now. So we're going to call that done, and we're not going to touch it lest it falls apart any worse. But I mean, it does look good. That looks like the head of an AT-AT, and it looks a lot better than the official Lego one does.
It's menacing. Do you have an official one laying around?
I do actually, but I'm tethered to my microphone tonight with the lavalier, so I don't think I should really go get it. Actually, no, I can do that. I can make that.
Yeah, side by side's a thing. Let's demonstrate the differences, shall we? That's the thing that happens in the world of YouTube and live streaming. Okay. I'm terrified. This is creeping along after me, so I'm terrified.
Yeah, so this is the one. This is based on The Mandalorian, so it's the most recent one that they've made. Okay, we got to go super nerd for a quick second. This is the most recent one they made based off of the Return of the Jedi design. They put one out this year based on the Empire Strikes Back design. I didn't know that there were two different designs. People were complaining that the new one looks weird, and they're like, well, actually, it's because it's the one from Hoth, not the one from Endor. So this is the one from Endor. That's a very specific thing.
So that's what I think of. That's the design that comes to my head when you say ATST.
There were walkers. The ATST was on Hoth, so yeah. But so we got a lot better detailing on the custom one, but it's obviously super fragile. Whereas this one, nothing's going to fall off of it, like nothing at all.
You know, as many times as I've seen all those movies, when you say Hoth to me, I'm thinking AT-ATs.
Oh yeah.
And ATST doesn't come to mind, but
they're
all
in the
that
shot, but yeah, everyone overlooks them.
That and all the times I've played, I mean, how many times have they done that mission in the video games on every system?
Oh, absolutely.
Where you're taking them down. So they're always part of it, and Rogue Squadron comes to mind. Shadows of the Empire, I think, was the first time I got to play Star Wars and actually feel like I'm in Star Wars. And yeah, there's a part of the mission where you have to blow those up. So I know they're there, but from the film, AT-AT is all that comes to mind because of how menacing they are and amazing. Just one of the coolest creations. It's a simple creation.
Yeah, Lego loves to go back to that over and over again. They love to do like Snow Trooper packs and Hoth Rebel Troopers, and now they made like the totally obscure, no one even knows it's there, ATST from Hoth. They must sell, I don't know, it must be like a big seller for them. It's like how Hasbro has a rule, there's always got to be a Darth Vader figure on the shelves.
Right.
Oh, dude, turn your phone off. Come on, we're doing a show.
I'm sorry. I'm not usually doing a show right now. Usually I'm editing a show instead of being on a show. I feel like this is an important time, though, so I'm gonna make sure that that's turned off. It doesn't happen again. I can't help it that I have an old school Nokia phone just sitting on my desk that makes noise. Don't question it.
Hey, it's all good. You got the old school Really, how old school is this Nokia?
About as old school as I could download off the internet for an awesome ringtone. I'm weird. I like my phone to ring. I don't need it to play a song all the time.
Hey, you do you, man. So another quick thing that I updated. So the kit shipped with black, because this is another thing with buying clone parts. They'll just give you whatever they got, not necessarily the one that's prescribed, because a lot of times they basically steal these designs. They don't actually pay the designers for them. So this company had black. They're like, screw you, deal with it. So I bought gray, like it's supposed to be. So we got some mix and match going on with that. But anyway,
it's happened. It's happened. I'm sorry, AJ, but it's happened. Your brother's here.
What the fuck is this?
Yep, I figured. Now, has he tuned in long enough to know that we don't actually need him chiming in the chat, because we've already got him on mic anyway?
He knows now.
Oh, man. So here's another funny thing. If you want to flip back over to the instructions real quick.
You got it.
We don't have any neon green bricks. This actually is explained in the instructions as whatever color you got will be just fine. Like, they actually don't care, so they call it out in bright green.
So this is just a placeholder?
Yeah, they're like, it's not going to be seen anyway, so just use whatever color you got. The problem is they don't tell you like which piece they've provided that fills that role. So you might like use one that you actually need elsewhere. Because the other thing is, like, Lego sorts it all into like little sub-assemblies for you. Not so with all these other kits. You just get a pile of parts, and then it's up to you to sort through them all.
I'm going to try to speak Lego here for a second. So would that be considered a structural piece?
Yeah, I think so.
I mean, if the color doesn't matter, then obviously you're not going to see it.
Yeah, it's just sitting inside to hold shit together. Exactly.
See, I know my Lego terms. I understand bricks. I know 4x2s and all that. I don't
I could
actually.
educate you.
Educate all of us in all things Lego as we put together this amazing ATST.
Well, okay, I'll give you a quick example. There's another thing that we like to refer to as nice parts usage. And you get little stuff like this guy. This is a whip. It's a whip that a figure holds, but it makes a hell of a little like cable if you just want some like loose wiring hanging around. Or this little guy looks like, in this case, it's going to look like a heat sink, but it's actually a hubcap from a car. Or if you really want to go old school. Oh, speaking of car parts, that's what this curved black piece that I got in dark gray. That's also a car fender. Or my favorite one, because this just calls me back to my childhood. Where to go? There we go. This little guy. This is
now we're talking.
Walkie-talkie. Old school walkie-talkie. And it's just there for like what they call greebling, just a little extraneous mechanical detail to look fancy.
Right. It's a thing that we clipped to Han's belt to make it look like he was wearing a thing. It's fine.
Exactly.
I'm not a visual designer, but sometimes they get imaginative. I mean, if at the end of the day, if all you did was paint a cheese grater black and glue it to something, and I didn't notice watching the movie, you did your job.
Exactly. Like how many battleship, that's where kit bash comes from, the term. Because they would just go and buy like battleship kits from the hobby shop, spray paint them gray, and glue pieces together in weird ways. And all of a sudden you got a Star Destroyer.
Now, have the three of you, I know at some point here we're going to talk about Celebration, have the three of you built a lightsaber from parts yet? I don't mean ordering a kit. I don't mean following a guide on the internet because we all want Luke's lightsaber. I mean, have you gone to the store and come out with parts that ended up being a lightsaber hilt?
I have not. That would be one hell of a thing. If I was going to do like a Jedi costume, I think I would still probably just buy a replica saber instead of trying to build one. Which it's just really, now that you mention it, makes it sound stupid. Like if you're going to do it, you do it right and you build your own.
Yeah, well, that's the old school way. I mean, now you can buy the kits, and it's fine because at the end of the day, somebody has to source and figure out what those things are. So it's kind of like trying to sail around the ocean without a map. You don't have to do it that way anymore. I don't think you're more legit because you go across the water and don't take a nautical map with you. But yeah, it's a thing. It's a fun creative exercise, right? It's like what you're doing right now. Somebody just went and pulled a bunch of parts out of a Lego bin and said, these will all work together to make an ATST.
Mm-hmm. The other problem is a lot of especially the original props from the original movies, you're talking now 40 years ago and older than that even. Like a lot of the stuff, I think it's Obi-Wan's lightsaber, or maybe it's Luke's from the first movie. It's like I want to say it's a camera flash from the 1940s or something.
Yes. Almost impossible
really
to
old
find.
And obscure. Yeah, and then like Han Solo's gun is based off a World War II pistol from Germany. So, good luck unless you're buying, Nazi paraphernalia or, memorabilia or whatever. You're kind of stuck for getting the original. You've got to buy a remake.
Yeah, everybody's in the chat saying the kits are fine. It's still dope. I agree.
I still want to do that. I want to do that so bad.
Still want to go over to Galaxy's Edge? I'm surprised you guys haven't made that a trip yet. You keep talking about Celebration and when it was in, I think it was Orlando, or was it Miami?
Mm-hmm. Orlando. Last time it was in Orlando was 2017, though.
And you didn't
Galaxy's
find a
Edge
way
is not
over
open
there.
yet.
Oh, that's right. It's been so long. I keep forgetting when that opened. I forget when Disney bought it versus when Galaxy's Edge opened.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, though. This is what chaps my ass. I actually had plans for 2020. They used to do a running weekend in Disney World where they had like a 5K and a 10K and a half marathon. And like you'd get medals for doing all the things. And I had this whole thing booked for April 2020 where I was going to go down, I was going to run and get these, super exclusive running medals. And then I was going to go to Galaxy's Edge and do all that stuff. And of course, 2020 happened. And I have not made it back since, and they haven't brought the event back either. So at some point, I'm just going to go down there anyway. I know John's going to chime in the chat and bitch at me because, we're going to do that together. But it's been how long now, and he's made no plans to do it. So I think I'm fair.
Oh, come on!
There you go. But yeah, Galaxy's Edge looks amazing. I wish Steve was on the stream because he knows all about the Disney planning and stuff, and it's insane what goes into that stuff. I was talking to a friend about it today, actually, and it's not just like, hey, I'll buy my ticket and go do it. It's like, no. To get on the rides, you have to have early park access. You only get early park access if you're staying in an on-site resort, and you have to be at one of 4 resorts that's on a certain tram line that runs past the rides. You get there ahead of all the people that are waiting for a bus from their hotel. So it's this whole thing that, like, just to do like one thing, you've got to have like an $1,100 vacation planned per day. Disney makes their money. Don't you worry.
Oh, absolutely. Provide everything up front, charge for it. 5 days later, everybody goes home happy. And
exactly.
I haven't been in recent years, but I can absolutely say if you want to get away and have some fun, Disney is not the worst decision you could make. And if it's expensive, spend some time, save some cash. It's worth it. It is uniquely. Can I say intoxicating? Like, is that the good word? Because there's no reason why some of those older features can pull you in like they do. Because if you put your adult hat on, you just say, oh, those are just machines, and there's a motor going like this, and everything's fine. But you don't care after about 45 minutes anymore. It just starts to work. And
right, it's all suspension of disbelief.
Yes, and I'm surprised. Maybe they do, and I just don't know. But like with Galaxy's Edge, I'd be surprised if they didn't do something more classic Disney with some of those features, because they build some awesome stuff sometimes.
Yeah, I've had friends go down there who aren't even like huge Star Wars nerds, and they've said that it's like mind-blowing. It just blew them away, and they can't wait to go back again and do it. I'm like, you don't even like Star Wars. Like, I don't care. That ride is amazing.
Now, are you guys going to spend the $6,000 they're charging for the Star Wars hotel?
You could talk to John about that. I am not that big a nerd. I respect the American dollar a little too much for that, and it's not that easy for me to come by them. So, yeah, I'll pass on that.
I feel like you guys need a clip in the middle of the show. If any of you ever exhibits non-nerd behavior, just, plays the clip, not a nerd.
Yeah, I don't think that's really fair to say, like, not a nerd, though, because not having $6,000 doesn't mean you're not a nerd.
I want to appeal on behalf of Brian Patton in the chat. Apparently you can pilot the Millennium Falcon.
That would be Smuggler's Run.
And that's if you're not in for that, I don't know who you are anymore. I'm going to be honest.
See, I did have a crisis of conscience on this one. I'm curious to get your take on this. So the giant Millennium Falcon that's at Disneyland and Disney World in Galaxy's Edge, it's not just there for like display purposes. It's the ride. It's Smuggler's Run. So you can board the thing, and that's where you pilot the Millennium Falcon. Now, if you know the layout of the Millennium Falcon cockpit, how many seats does it have?
2. But I think the answer is 4. I just can't remember if Luke, Leia, and Obi-Wan sat down after they took off in the original movie.
Good catch. It's 4.
It is 4.
But it's hard to get people through the line fast enough on a Disney ride with only 4 seats available. So they made 2 more. So this is like the coolest, most realistic Millennium Falcon ever, except they crammed 2 extra seats in. And also the gunner positions, because there are 2 pilots, 2 gunners, and 2 engineers per ride. And you go on this whole thing and you can either like crash and die, or you can, live.
Why didn't
the gunners are supposed to be at the top and bottom of the ship, right? Down the hallway from the cockpit. They're right there behind the pilots and with the engineers. Do you have a problem with that? like they're trying to say this is like hyper realistic, but they've completely made concessions to, realities of ride sharing.
Why? I'm gonna say they could have just built 2 of them, done it as accurately as possible, and gotten 8 people through simultaneously. Despite the maintenance costs and time that it would take to maintain 2 Millennium Falcons, that probably doesn't make the most sense. I think the real issue here is not that they changed the seating layout, because most families that go to Disney are going to have more than 4 people total. Mm-hmm. So I think they missed an opportunity, though, to make it absurdly long. And instead of being the Smuggler's Run from Star Wars, you give it another clever name from Spaceballs. That's what they should have done. Just make it absurdly long, and you have 20 or 30 people. 4 pilots. Nobody can agree on which direction it's going to go. Have somebody dressed like Mel Brooks, and everything's fine. They could have made that work.
That would be fantastic. Fly the Spaceball.
There's your 5K.
Falcon. That's what you're saying?
There's your... Why not? Why not have them face off?
Oh, my God. That'd be fantastic. I mean, the Spaceball one would just jam the radar. That's what they do.
Right? And you get to have Michael Winslow make appearances and actually do the sounds again. I'm down for anything that guy does.
Do he would absolutely do that, too. You know he would.
Just show up randomly at Disney.
That'd be fantastic. Oh, yeah. So you're talking like not even a recording. The guy would just like be in there.
Oh, yeah. 100%. He would. Just have him sit in his seat, just make noises all day, pay him a truck of money, and everybody gets to meet and greet after the show. It's fine.
Oh, Brian chiming in. Okay, I didn't know this. Yeah, because I know there's some trickery where like you load the cockpit and you, as far as you can see from inside, correct me if I'm wrong here, Brian, but from inside the cockpit, it looks like you're sitting in the cockpit, but you're actually on a turntable. So there's multiple groups of 6 riding at once, just in their own isolated little like vacuum.
Common Disney trick: hide everything under what looks awesome, and then lighting and shadow, and they're awesome. They had different ways of thinking of things back in the day.
Dude, I actually love that. Have you seen any of the behind the scenes stuff that they've got on Disney Plus about how they made those rides?
I haven't watched those, but I've seen more than one kind of behind the scenes Disney thing over time. So some of that stuff is present in my brain. Like to this day, the Tower of Terror. I know how that works, but actually sitting there and going through it, I don't care. Props to you guys for figuring out how to do that and how to actually convince people.
Yeah, that actually makes it cooler to me to know that like it's not what you think it is, and even if you know what's really going on, it just makes it more impressive.
Yeah, like okay, nerdiest thing of the evening here. Anyone who's an engineer is going to be entertained by how they engineered that. Mm-hmm. It's like at the end of it all, we moved 20 feet. That's so cool. Well, how did they make you get the gust of wind in your face? Fans are a thing.
Yeah.
And somebody thought about it to that level. Oh, what's this? Some Scary says he or she, I don't really know who that is, unfortunately saw Spaceballs before Star Wars. Is that really unfortunate, though? Now that you've seen them both, doesn't that make Spaceballs more funny? Because the first time you see Spaceballs, if you're not into that kind of parody, it really feels like it just runs on and isn't funny for more than 1 minute of that film.
Yeah, wow, that's interesting. Because I think Spaceballs came out in what, like 87?
I have this wonderful thing called the internet in front of me. I can tell you exactly when Spaceballs came out. Yes, that would be 87.
So yeah, it was like 4 years after Star Wars stopped making movies. But I just assumed by that point that like everybody knew what it was. I can't even imagine. Like, wow. Now I want to know, what year did KXM actually end up seeing Spaceballs? Was it like when it came out or sometime after? Basically, what I know is, KXM, are you Amish? Okay, I like this though.
Yeah.
I like this. KXM is right on this one.
Throw it up. Throw it up.
Comedian had a bit that if you saw Spaceballs first, watching Star Wars is like watching unfunny Spaceballs. Yeah. Yeah, I never thought about like watching the spoof like before the thing.
Or one of the blatant ripoffs. Oh, Dan, help me out. I know you're in the chat. There's more than one film that was made with horrible production values in other countries, and they just use scenes from Star Wars to make it look like big and epic. And it's so bad. I don't even want to pretend I know what movie that is, but yeah, it's an experience to see someone else take scenes from your favorite movie and turn it into a shitty B movie.
That sounds like a Bollywood thing to do.
It probably is. It's probably that simple, and it's still one of the most entertaining things I've ever seen, because it feels like a bad student film.
That would be fantastic. I would love to see that. Dan, you got to chime in, save us on that one.
Come on, help me out here. Oh, come on.
So speaking of films that have just bad scenes of Star Wars in them, you want to talk the absence of the sequel trilogy at Star Wars Celebration?
I do, and I want to know. I want to know what your guys are, what your take is on that, because now that the hype is kind of gone, and we're seeing Disney focusing more on like the MCU movies and creating amazing, for the most part, Star Wars series. Do we really need that trilogy to feel like we're getting the experience? Because a trilogy to me is just two movies that leave you suspended for the finish. But if you can spend an extra 30 minutes on one movie and just tell the story, I don't see the problem with that. Prime example, Rogue One. You had one movie, told a good story, can watch it on its own, don't even need to know it's the prequel to Star Wars, and everything's fine. But then you get your sequel trilogy where no matter what happens for this movie and the next movie, there's going to be another movie that maybe throws most of this in the garbage. Is that really a problem?
I like that take. That's really interesting, because you're right. Like, Rogue One stands on its own, even though it's a setup for other films. And I think one of the biggest problems that the newer trilogy in particular had was that it was very much like, I don't know, Empire Strikes Back clearly was like leading to a conclusion in the next movie, but it didn't feel like you got screwed out of anything in Empire Strikes Back in favor of setting up Return of the Jedi. But the newer movies, especially, like, you only see Luke Skywalker in the last couple seconds of Force Awakens. And then you're like, okay, well, clearly I want to see Luke Skywalker, and I didn't in this movie. They basically just dangled him out there like a carrot and didn't deliver on purpose. So, like, it goaded you into going to see the next movie instead of, like, enticing you to. Does that make sense?
It makes sense, and that was the only new Star Wars I got to see with my dad. He was the reason I watched Star Wars for the first time, so when I think of things that were like his thing, Star Wars is always on that list. And his take on it was it was just the original movie done again. They just ended it it was a carbon copy of Star Wars. And I think that's okay. I don't think that's as bad as some of the diehard fans think it is, because if Star Wars is, I'm going to get this quote wrong, but if it's supposed to be a movie about things happening in space with wizards and it's a movie for kids, I'm kind of fine with you just stealing the same story because it's not a unique story. That hero model or that underdog who becomes the hero by the end of the movie, that's not new. Mm-hmm. So I'm okay with it because I feel like it was something for young fans, new fans. We're gonna set you up. We're gonna introduce Rey, who's our hero. We're gonna tease the Yoda figure in that timeline or in that part of the story, and then we're going to take a break, and you're gonna come back, and you're gonna learn more. That works for everybody who doesn't know every nitty-gritty detail about Luke Skywalker.
So you're saying that as long as you haven't seen the movies that preceded it, then it works just fine because it seems original to you. I don't mean that like as a setup. I mean like honestly, like if you're 4 years old going to see your first Star Wars movie in 2015, it's fine by you.
If all you had was the sequel trilogy, is Episode 7 a good movie?
I would say probably yeah.
Then it's fine. It's hard as fans to go to see something new without expectations, and I think Star Wars is one of the biggest examples of that. It's really hard to go see any Star Wars film without feeling like everyone should know what's happening. It's almost impossible to think about that one person who that's their first Star Wars experience, and it's somebody. I think there's a market, and I always will, for make your diehard 40-year Star Wars fan story for the people that know everything, who've read every book, who've seen every movie, who've read every comic, who've played every game, who have gone so far into the backstory they know details about Admiral Thrawn that I will never be able to that I'll never be able to repeat. You could make a movie for them.
Credit for digging Thrawn out, by the way.
He's one of the names I think we all want to see, and I
know a thing or two. You're claiming to be ignorant on Star Wars, but you know some stuff.
I listen to a lot of audiobooks. It's a thing I do. I play a lot of games. Thrawn's kind of the man. I don't think he's as cool as... I don't think he is the man, but I think he's one of the lesser known characters. If you wanted to do lesser utilized, I think if you wanted to do a trilogy, you asked about trilogies in the very beginning. Don't do the Thrawn trilogy. Don't do the books and make them into a movie. Give me a Finn and Poe story about Admiral Thrawn, and have Admiral Thrawn be the villain of that story. And I don't even mean the nice villain. Make him a gritty, dark character that is absolutely, it's personal for some reason. And make that for the super fan that knows everything about Thrawn. Because he's an educated guy, right? He's supposed to be smart. He's supposed to be outthinking the rebels at all times. And most of the time he is, except for that one time he doesn't.
Or like every time in Rebels.
Or like every time he loses, you chalk it up to, you don't win the war by winning the battle. So what you're saying is it's okay to keep losing until you stop losing.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's the villain
story.
Version,
now that we're down in the weeds, which version of Thrawn are we talking about here? Are we talking about the books that came out in the 90s, or are we talking about the newer version that has been written since Disney took over?
Which one is technically considered the Thrawn trilogy to you?
Tough call because
it's all legends now, right?
Yeah, I went and I have my Audible subscription. Go to audibletrial.com/NHC for your free 30-day trial and a free audiobook download. And I listened to 1.5 of the new Thrawn trilogy, and I just kind of zoned out because it was not for me. Did not enjoy it that much. So as far as the official canon goes now, not my favorite, not really on board for it. But the ones back in the 90s that were supposed to be basically like the literary successors, the literary episodes 7, 8, and 9. Oh yeah. Those things were fantastic.
I've been in that room. I've been in that meeting. I have heard someone take an idea or a character that they think they see potential in, but for whatever reason, they don't want to spend enough time with the history of that character. They want to just start over because that's easier when you're an executive, right? You just pick something and say, we're going to take that concept, we're going to throw away all those books that we paid someone else to write, we're not going to pay them anything or spend any time trying to adapt that story, we're just going to create a new story. Mm-hmm. I've been in that meeting, I've heard that argument, and I understand it. As a fan, you kind of feel cheated because here's this book series, that's perfectly fine. Batman Killing Joke is a simple example. Here is a near perfect story in the opinion of most fans.
Okay.
But we want to change it. We want to adapt it. We want to use ideas from that story to create a better story. I think it comes down to I think it comes down to where you're going to make more money. Are you going to make more money on the people that are new to that concept? Who it's more I want to say, I think rewarding is the idea I want to give here. It's more rewarding to give the new fans something they've never seen and the old fans something that they're not expecting than it is to just take that book that we've all read 1,000 times and make it a movie. I think there is room for that, but I can see why they don't do it. I'm okay with it either way, because if you're going to throw out an entire history of books and call it Legends, then make Legends movies. Where's my Darth Bane movie?
Oh, just
where's my Plagueis movie?
Continuity?
Don't even make it a continuity. If Rogue One can be a standalone film, just make another movie. Star Wars Legends. Darth Bane. 2 hours later, that was awesome.
And say, this might count. Doesn't matter. You figure it out.
It doesn't even have to count. It can just be a good movie with characters that people like.
You know, I do kind of like that because I feel like, especially with old franchises, like this ties back into our Star Trek conversation. At some point, you've got so much lore and continuity to keep track of that it just becomes overbearing. And fans love to point out all the inconsistencies. And eventually, you can't write a perfect story that doesn't break some sort of, previously established rule. And it sucks to think like you're not getting the best stories you can because people are more worried about making sure it fits continuity than making sure they can tell the best story possible.
I think if there's one thing we've learned from Marvel, it's that you can make a career out of films from all perspectives, creative and from the fans' perspective, and people will actually respect the continuity of just letting one person decide what happens. Generally, you have to do. This is the story you have to tell. How you tell that story is up to you. Don't try to deviate. But it's one thing I think that, and even you guys have talked about it on the main show. It's one thing that Marvel did that Star Wars failed to do, because The Last Jedi was so different that they had to bring back JJ to fix what they changed, because it kind of broke from the main continuity, or what was the plan.
Yeah, it gets weird when you do stuff like that. I could totally see that. One thing that I like, a lot of people like to talk about the Lucasfilm Story Group, because there's the arbiters of continuity and everything. And they keep pushing back on that because they say, our job is not to tell you, you can't do that because this character is supposed to be. Their job is to try to find a way clear of those obstacles so you can tell the story you want to tell and not feel burdened by continuity. So they're more just to say like, okay, there might be something here we got to work out as a plot detail. Can we explain how this works? Not be like, nope, rewrite it. You came up with something that's broken.
Right.
And I like that approach a lot better. The idea of like facilitating a story rather than hampering it.
I'm trying to come up with a good example of this in recent memory. Where
let's talk Trek for a second then.
Let's please. That's how you got me hooked on this.
let's look at Discovery, for example. You know, people are all up in arms because Discovery redid the Klingons and kind of redid the events of the timeline, because they're like, if the Federation was at war with the Klingons like 10 years before Kirk and the Enterprise, wouldn't we have heard something about that? Or if Spock had a human stepsister, wouldn't we have heard about that? But they had a story they wanted to tell, and they weren't going to let, established canon get in the way of a good story.
A story writer that I used to work with, who guy's name's Jason. He went on to he writes books now. Told me that everything you don't tell the listener, you don't tell the viewer, and you don't tell the reader, is something that you can elaborate on later on and make a good story out of it. The challenge, I skipped a part, everything you don't tell the actor hurts their performance and may make it impossible for you to tell that story at a later date. And the challenge is, and I think Harry Potter is a good example of this, because apparently Alan Rickman knew some things about his character that nobody else knew for years. And if he didn't know those things,
into Snape?
He knew what the word always meant the whole time. So if he knew that, that's something his character would know. And how long did it take for them to tell us that? So that's I think it's fine. I don't want Star Trek to have Star Trek timeline and then the Kelvin timeline. I don't want that. But I think it's okay if you have a good story. Making stuff up because you need to write a story, that's one thing. If Spock had a stepsister, we would know about that. Why do you need to know about that? Why let's just turn this in the direction of Mr. Leonard Nimoy himself. Why would Spock tell everybody everything ever?
Fair point.
Would that be logical? If you know all my secrets, I have nothing to hide. So
I get you.
It makes sense. It makes sense. I'm fine with it. I think there are some tropes you can avoid in writing for a while, and that we're always going to have that problem. But I don't think the problem with Discovery is the story. I think it's more of trying to make Star Trek into a gritty action movie, when what everyone who watches Star Trek wants is submarines in space.
Yeah, it's funny that Star Trek is so busy trying to go in another direction because they think that Star Trek is played out. And then you get a show like the Orville, whose success is based entirely around being the Star Trek that Star Trek won't deliver.
Dude, let me go get some water, and then I'm going to come back. We're going to talk about the Orville for a second. Is that cool?
Oh, very good.
Give me just a second.
Oh, that's all good. All good, man. So yeah, what we're building now is basically a bunch of bullshit. I mean, there's no better way to put it. This is all just details. This is what we call greebling in Star Wars land. It just looks interesting and mechanical to give the model more detail. And that's why we have little hubcaps going on here, because why not? But this is all those fun parts that we were using before, so it works out. But yeah, so for anyone who's not caught up on Star Trek, like, we're discussing here and getting into the Orville and whatnot, one thing that is interesting is, as much as we're actually getting more Star Wars than ever with these streaming series, Star Trek has gone full bore into having 5 concurrent series in development right now. Not just in development, but in production. Like, they currently have finally executed their mission of having a new episode of Star Trek on Paramount Plus every week of the year. So as soon as a season of one show ends, they are, in most cases, overlapping with the season finale of one show. They've got the season premiere of another show going up the same day or the same week at least. So there is never a lapse of new Star Trek coming out. It's frankly insane. Like, we've never seen anything like it. So if you're a fan of sci-fi, Star Trek wants all your dollars, because they are coming out with 52 plus new episodes a year of Trek. It's absolutely insane. But, it gives nerds like us plenty to talk about, so could be worse. And the nice thing is, because they've got 5 different series, they're all different styles. So if you are into, say, like a Rick and Morty style animation show that's all Easter eggs and in-jokes in the Next Generation era, they've got this show called Lower Decks for you. If you are a kid and you're more into kids-aged animation, they've got a show that's co-produced with Nickelodeon called Prodigy that brings back Kate Mulgrew as Captain Janeway from Voyager years. They've got this show Star Trek Discovery, which is based in the 32nd century, so it's like far-flung future Trek. You've got Star Trek Picard, which is a continuation of Captain Jean-Luc Picard's story from the Next Generation. And now they've got Star Trek Strange New Worlds, which is the stories of Pike and the original Enterprise crew before Kirk takes over for the original series timeline. So all the Trek you can handle, one new episode a week guaranteed on Paramount Plus. It's insane. Have you been watching all of them?
I have gotten through 2, and that's because I was cramming, rewatching season 1 of Picard, because I remember I didn't like it very much, but I wanted to revisit some of those later episodes, make sure I didn't miss anything. I think it's interesting that they are turning soon into the villain of season 3. I didn't see that coming. Well, there's a spoiler of season 2 I was expecting, and I'm still convinced that the ending of season 3 is going to be, surprise, this happened, and we just didn't say anything about it.
Interesting. Okay. Throw up the instructions real fast. I want to show another fun little quirk. So what this step says is, you should have these parts, but nah, we didn't give them to you. So it's literally, you can tell they just ripped off someone else's instructions and then just said, no, we're not giving you those.
Can I ask JT one more time what he thinks about that?
Let's get his opinion, yeah.
Oh, come on!
Okay.
I agree with him. He is 100% correct. It's ridiculous. By the way, this whole time, we're just building a little chunk that goes underneath the ATST. That's how long it takes just to build a brick.
Let the hate flow through you.
Right? So anyway, so you were going to bring up the Orville.
I am so beyond burned out on how Seth MacFarlane makes comedy. And he chose that moment in my life to create what is visually and in every way possible except some of the conversation, some of the dialogue, the most Star Trek thing we've seen in a long time.
Mm-hmm.
I was sold the Orville as it's Star Trek, The Next Generation, only Family Guy. As if it was on Family Guy watching this. And I'm burned out on Seth MacFarlane. Like I said, I'm just tired of the cutaway. I'm tired of how he creates dialogue, but he strikes me as someone who writes the funny better than he performs the funny, because as the writer of the funny, he's always improvising somewhat, so he gets away with it. But that show it has that stale, almost everything in Star Trek to me looks like it's been finished with some type of carpet, whether it's like insane shag carpet or it's just the flat, just calm, really, really matte squares that you can buy for a couple bucks and, lay down a carpet on a concrete floor. Yay, I redid the garage, honey. Everything kind of has like a matte texture to it. Galaxy Quest is a good example of that visual that, again, I'll say it, it's submarines in space. That's how this all started, right? Submarines in space. The Orville looks like that.
Galaxy Quest is a deliberate satire of Star Trek, so it would make sense.
100%. The Orville is the most Star Trek thing that's been on TV in a long time. I want to shake his hand and say, do me a favor, just 6 episodes. Don't do it funny. Just be Star Trek. You're 90% of the way there. You just can't get out of your own way. Please just take a break from the funny and write something serious. Because it even goes into serious, relevant issues the way Star Trek used to do.
Mm-hmm.
And still does some ways, but they make a serious episode about it. And the whole time, Seth MacFarlane's over there making fart jokes. That's really the only problem I have with the show. It's so Star Trek. And
yeah, it's incredible. I think there is a place for the humor in it, though. Like you said, it's the best Trek we've had in recent memory. And I think when they do get serious on topics, it hits harder because of the comedy sprinkled in there. Like when the gender issue came up with the Mocklins, I think it is, right?
Yes.
Bortus. Yeah, and the whole like we have a female daughter.
It's the opposite of that that story you've seen done 1,000 times in fantasy. We are an entire race of men, and every 1,000 years there is born one female.
Right.
And this one was apparently an accident.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But they play that guy for yucks so many times because he's so stoic. He's like the Worf knockoff. That when something real happens with them, it's so thoughtfully done.
You could have drawn a line to the Next Generation episode where Picard had to defend Data and his sentience. It's the same. It's the same tone. It's the same story of this is a serious issue that we're going to just write an episode around. And it was a story about, if I remember, it's been a while since I've seen that episode, but I remember it being a story about acceptance and identity and choice, all things that are very relevant nowadays. And even to some degree, not the choice not being your decision, if I remember it right. That's how I interpreted it.
Are we talking about the Orville episode or
yes.
the Star Trek episode?
Or Orville, yeah. Yeah, we're on the Orville now because as much as I can say how great that show is but I wish Seth MacFarlane would stop making fart jokes, I'm going to keep repeating it. You're going to have to kick me off the show. It's going to be my returning theme on every appearance if I ever get to come back. Now that I've made that threat, who knows what's going to happen?
No, I get you. I'm really stoked for season 3 because, if you go through season 2 of the Orville, he dials down the humor a lot, actually. It becomes a lot more about the plots.
So I need to get back into it, is what you're telling me.
Yeah, the tone does darken up a little bit. It gets a little bit more serious in season 2. And the way they end season 2, they've got a trailer out there for season 3 because it starts up in June on Hulu. And, it's been a couple of years in the making because, pandemic just threw everything off as far as like production schedules. We're at a little bit of an impasse here, by the way, because as much as I built this already, pre-sorted it back down into its parts, apparently I didn't sort it correctly. I am missing a vital piece of this next step, so I can't actually make this last little bit of stuff.
Oh, let me see. Let me pull some comments. Let me
don't care.
AJ distracted here.
Without it.
Oh,
it's
here we go.
Structural.
It's not structural. Oh, so it's the opposite of the earlier problem, where this one you can
decorative.
see.
Yeah, it's just decorative. It's just a thing on the back here.
Can we introduce a rule on these WTF Wednesdays and or Fridays, where if you are missing a part, you have to then find a part out of your parts bin that is such an absurd wrong color, and you have to live with that choice as long as the model sits on your shelf?
Oh God, I would, but do you know how long that would take?
Dude,
that's
part of the fun.
I still have a box of my childhood Lego.
I applaud that. I would have that too.
Like it's ridiculous. I've got stuff that's probably worth a hell of a lot of money because strangely, old Lego is worth more, even though their claim to fame is that the new stuff fits with the old stuff. Like you could put together a piece from the 1960s with a piece that was made yesterday and it'll fit. So there's nothing like special about old pieces except that they're old.
Congratulations, we've come back to the quality of actual Lego. Okay, so
they came up with a design and man, they stuck to it.
So I'm gonna throw this up because I think this was something I missed this comment earlier from Brian. The first book in the new Thrawn trilogy is pretty boring, but that series gets better, and the Ascendancy trilogy is good.
Oh, I forgot. There's actually 2 new trilogies. That's right.
I'm out of I'm out of touch with the new Star Wars books. If I had enough time to listen to all of the Star Wars audiobooks that I want to listen to, I would not be prepared to record my show, Discography Discussion, at discussmetal.com, where we talk about all things metal. Thank you so much. I learned from your earlier behavior. I'm repeating your behavior. I learned it from you, AJ. But one book series that I have been listening to, and I know I've recommended this to you recently, and there's a question in here. You're going to get to answer the age-old question, as it were. I've been listening to Rick Brown's The Frontier Saga. If you want an audiobook series that seemingly will not end, because there's dozens of these written now, that is almost a carbon copy of the Star Trek ideas, just jump in, of Rick Brown. I don't mean it's a copy in that it's annoying. It's like giving someone an open source piece of the pie. The Frontier Saga is almost like Star Trek if we colonize another planet and then we have another federation around that planet. He just takes some of the language and the way the team works together, and some of the general ideas of a good Star Trek confrontation, and that's the book series. It's some of the best Trek you can listen to right now, if you don't sit around listening to the Orville.
I wonder if there are Orville books out there.
Please tell me there aren't. I need to get back into season 2. You're telling me that season 2 got more serious, so maybe I'm not being fair.
Yeah, it got more serious. It has, it really picks up with the Krill threat.
Okay.
The Krill are like the Orville stand-in for the Klingons. So the Krill threat gets dialed up. There's a few recurring storylines that pay off later. Like that's where I hope Strange New Worlds can land on its feet, because they're doing this mix of like through lines for characters, but story of the week style storytelling. And the Orville season 2 did that fantastically, where you got a complete story every week, but characters would be introduced in one episode and then come back in a later episode. So it still acknowledged that like the things that took place in one episode actually mattered to the future continuity of the show. Because so you've done this rewatch of Next Generation, right? Like, upon binging, have you noticed how much they just drop certain plot threads? Like something that seems like it should come back later or have a ton of impact is just utterly forgotten the next week.
I've noticed that, and I think they get away with it with how the Next Generation transitions between seasons. They started off the way you'd expect a sci-fi show to to formula its stories. It's something that you see in most animes. The first episode is epic and extreme and dark, and it sets you up for this idea of this is the good guy, this is the bad guy, this is what's going to happen, and then everything is nice and pretty for like 8 or 9 episodes, and then we get back to that super heavy dark shit that we saw in the first episode. The first season of Star Trek Next Generation is kind of that. They set up this premise of we are explorers in space. It reintroduces Star Trek. We talk about this evil thing. If you remember the quote from the series, something's not right. And it takes them so many episodes to explain that what's not right is spoilers for a TV show that's been out for over 30 years.
Spoilers from 1988, guys.
Is a creature of it's Invasion of the Body Snatchers is what it is.
Yeah, it was fantastic. So out of place for Star Trek.
After that, I think they figured out that what people loved about that series is the characters. I will fight anyone until the end of time that the actual main character of the Star Trek Next Generation saga, movies, TV shows, everything, I will argue that Data is actually the main character. After they figured out that what people liked about Star Trek was the characters, and they spent more time building on those people and how they develop in that environment, which might be closer to what Gene Roddenberry originally had in mind. So I think they get away with it.
I think you're onto something there. Especially because Gene Roddenberry, was directly involved in the Next Generation until his passing.
Yes. That's
And yeah, there's so many data-centric stories. He's the Spock proxy, right? He's like the near human character that we can, paint the human condition onto and experience through his eyes.
Yeah.
He's trying to toy with love or humor or, any other number of totally human things. He becomes our proxy for the story. You're absolutely right on that. I don't know if I necessarily want that though. I think what Next Generation did best was have an ensemble cast.
100%. I can't quote this line, but it's the story that I keep hearing is what Gene Roddenberry was trying to show with that series in all of its forms was his vision of the future where we all get along and we quit worrying about material things.
Yeah, so we don't have money and
the ensemble
we got replicators
cast
to make any stuff we need. Yeah,
right. The ensemble cast was supposed to be the literal visual of everybody working together, and it's not being about egos and individual. One person has all the answers. It's no. This is just how everybody works together, which I'll always kind of laugh at because isn't that a very military? It's a military style command, but everybody's not. Everybody's always engaged. They're always intense, but it's never intense, and that's the stereotype, right?
Yeah.
You're the engineer. Tell me what you think. You're the communications officer. You're the security officer. You're the young techno wizard, and I'm the captain. Everybody says what they think needs to happen, and then we just do it. That's all of it. And
unless
it works.
You're Wesley Crusher, then you just get told to shut up.
Yeah, but he's everywhere now. Don't you know?
Yes. I mean, I guess we don't really have to worry about spoilers for Picard season 2.
But too late. So
shut up Wesley memes never get old.
Yep. So this is the question. KXM is asking Star Trek. Where do you start? Never seen, want to. How much cheese do you want in your day?
And how far down the rabbit hole do you want to go? I feel like this is the Star Wars equivalent. This is the Trek equivalent of the Star Wars question. Do you start with episode 4? Do you start with episode 1? It's like, well, depends on what kind of experience you want for your storytelling.
I want to take a stand here and now on the Nerf Herder Council WTF Wednesday. Probably the first and last, unless you decide to reschedule another one of these for a Wednesday when you're not going to Celebration, and say you start with Star Wars.
Okay. Simple and to the point. I'll take that. Now, answer it for Star Trek.
I think the Next Generation is the best starting point for a sci-fi fan. If you're generally a fan of sci-fi, new, old, and by old I mean pre-1985, newer being everything from 1990 forward, I think there's value in the original series, but there is a huge jump in recent years from not that much Star Trek to a lot of Star Trek. And I saw Brian Patton earlier said Voyager was his favorite. I can't tell if he's trolling. But Star Trek The Next Generation is a lot of the ideas of the original series with a lot less camp. And I think the first series is good, but there are some fans, if you're not generally a fan of sci-fi and you can't look at a blatantly staged alien planet that's a studio, I think for some people that's a jump that they just can't make visually. They can't buy into it the way you can buy into still a lot of those scenes in Next Generation. Now, maybe I'm looking at that with rose-colored glasses because that's the first Star Trek I remember watching. But I think as a whole, it's the best starting point for submarines in space. In fact, I'll even say it's a stretch, but tell me what you think about this. Just watch First Contact.
Oh, jump right into the second of the Next Generation movies.
Yeah, just if you want to get an idea for what who those characters are and how they interact with each other, and it's just cinematic enough. It's absolutely a movie, but it doesn't really. It visually represents itself more like one of the offshoot episodes of Next Generation.
I could see that.
I see I'm offending here a little bit, AJ. Come on. Where do you want to start?
I never get a chance to talk about this stuff, so I actually have to think about my opinions as you say stuff instead of having things ready to go. I'm going to do a Star Wars show for 7 years. You've got canned responses for most things. So I'm trying to think about it, and I think you're right, because in the same way that, like you said, Next Generation is like a visual upgrade, and it reduces that noise coming from the clearly staged 1960s TV budget sci-fi. I feel like First Contact also does that. Like if you do start with First Contact and then you go back and you see the introduction of the Borg in Next Generation, you'd be like, wow, okay, yeah, this was cheeseball. Because I mean the budget just wasn't there and the effects weren't there back in the early 90s to do that concept justice. But then you put a movie budget behind it, and all of a sudden you've got, cool-looking cybernetic aliens.
This word I hear thrown out a lot. Does this age well? I don't have that. I don't have that answer anymore, because I think the question of does it age well is how much are you, the fan, able to buy into it? There's an entire group of people who, no matter how old they are, love cheesy, retro sci-fi that is so blatantly a man in a rubber suit that absolutely, with 100% without a question, just start with the original. Watch the old school Battlestar Galacticas. Watch the really old school Doctor Who's if you can find them. War of the Worlds. I mean, we can go all the way back if you want. And if Dan is still in the chat, I'm going to go ahead and mention the Giant Claw and say there are those people that can just buy into it, and that's. I think we know who we are as a fan, but where do you start with Star Trek? I think the one that ages the best is the Next Generation era shows. And it's also the most Trek you can get in one era.
Also true, yeah.
If I'm remembering my timelines right, Deep Space Nine happened at the end of Next Generation, but they ran together for a couple years, and then Voyager picked up after Next Generation was done, but it was all supposed to be roughly the same timeline. Same, call it the same 50 years.
Right. Yeah. So there was 7 seasons of each of those shows, and it didn't work quite like a calendar year, but Deep Space Nine picked up, I think, starting with season 6 of the Next Generation,
and that was cool.
And they wrote in, past events of Next Generation, when Locutus of Borg happened, as the origin point for Sisko's character. So that was a flashback to kick off DS9, and then he, picks up in the pilot of DS9, and then you see Chief O'Brien leaving the Enterprise for his stationing on Deep Space Nine, and that's how they got that character from one show to another. So,
no explanation.
Yeah, it all connects through.
I lied.
And then Voyager took off from Deep Space Nine for its mission that ended up starting its series.
It allowed them to play with the idea of, if this show is only about the people, how do we get these people in one place and not move them anywhere most of the time? Make the show about a space station that's guarding a wormhole.
Mm-hmm.
Because those exist in Trek. There is such a thing as this is a colony in space, and I mean I was a very small hard to see child watching the TV. I always thought that the Deep Space Nine station looked like a really cool alien ship that they said, well, this is a design we worked on. This was going to be like a menacing spherical battleship or something. No, let's make it a space station, because it has like these tendrils going up and going down where the ships have to dock. It always looked cool to me. It looked like a ship that somebody designed as a bad character, and they just had it laying around. Well, we did the model. Let's just make it into a space station.
Yeah, if we just make it bigger, we'll pretend that ships can hang off of these things.
That's
okay.
No moon. That's a space station. It's
Right.
not a space station. That's a crown of thorns.
Oh, man. Underrated Megadeth song. Anyway.
Thank you.
Tying back into your discography discussion.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And Deep Space Nine gets weird after a while, but we'll save that for the next one.
Yeah. I'm going to pitch in an alternate entry point for Trek.
Do it.
And I'm going to pitch Strange New Worlds, actually, because it picks up, in the original series era, but it's its own collection of stories with characters that haven't really been explored yet. And it's all, it has the benefit of having that 90s era Trek already defined. So it knows what the future timeline of Trek is. So you don't have to worry about like the original series where they just made shit up and then just tossed it out when they were making the newer shows because it made no sense. So I think it's fun because you can get some like future Easter eggs if you know what you're looking for. And if you don't, it's just going to be a fun thing to find out later when you do end up watching those episodes.
So is Strange New Worlds supposed to be leading up to the original series? I know Captain Pike was the original Trek captain, and there was that episode where Spock stole the Enterprise because he had a loyalty to Pike that apparently exceeded Kirk, which we're going to find out about at some point, hopefully, and during this series, what that means. But
it was in... See, this is the thing. Like, if you haven't seen the original series, then this is a new story. If you have, you're just watching the events unfold leading up to what the original series told you.
And that was my jump on point. See, visually, it looks like another Kelvin show. Like there's something to be said, at least for me. The lens flares used to be not on purpose, and now we're putting them in after the fact. Just shoot the scene. That's the one thing I think that the newer Trek shows do too much. They move the camera. There's the older shows just pan. It's about the people in the scene and what's happening in the scene. The newer shows follow everybody around. They move the camera a lot. I know this doesn't bother people as much as it bothers me, but just the visual style, I was worried that they were leading up to the Kelvin timeline, which is everything from the J.J. Abrams reboot forward. Yeah, that's right.
There's a whole nasty real world explanation for all of that nonsense, but we don't have to get into that. Basically, just it's splitting of studio rights, and that's why the movies had to be different and yada yada.
But this is leading up to the original series.
Yes, this is fully acknowledging that everything in the original series from the 60s happened. The wrinkle
about to happen.
New Worlds. So to catch up on all the continuity, this will still be covered if you want to watch Strange New Worlds and not be spoiled. It's not really a big spoiler, but so you've seen Pike from the original series, yes?
I have seen that episode, and I've seen the pilot that they cut up into the menagerie later on.
Yeah, okay. So you know what becomes of Captain Pike.
Yes.
So in Discovery season 2, so it does tie into new continuity, Pike takes over as captain of the Discovery for that season.
Right.
And in the events of that, like the Enterprise is broke or something, so while it's getting fixed up in space dock, and Discovery has no captain due to the events of season 1 of that show, they throw Pike in command of Discovery. So, and in season 2, he gets shown that future. Basically gets told, hey, here's what happens to you. So now he's dealing with that. That's his through line in this new show is like, hey, you're going to end up, crippled in this chair. That's just going to happen.
I'm going to go ahead and say it's not a spoiler. It's one of the first things, if it's not the first thing that he says in episode 1.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
That's an interesting premise that they've taken with that. We talked about how characters are developed a little bit earlier in the stream, and I think that's a scenario that you can take and say, I want to do an entire premise around the guy that found out this was going to happen to him.
Mm-hmm.
Which, if you've seen the original series. Even knowing what happens in that episode and what the reason is for them showing him in the chair, knowing that that's not just that's going to happen to you, but you're going to feel this way about it. They're going to play with that. They're going to be able to play with it's like knowing you're going to feel bad about something and then trying to prepare yourself not to feel bad about it.
Yeah, I love this idea of like, knowing you have an inescapable, horrible fate, and then trying to figure out and this happens. Trek has told stories like this where, if you know the outcome of something, like remember the Next Generation episode where they keep dying over and over again. The ship keeps exploding. They're trapped in a time loop.
One of my youngest mind fucks of a story because I thought something was wrong with the TV.
Oh right, yeah,
100% worked on me when they do that episode.
Yeah,
still
before
works.
The credits even roll, the Enterprise blows up. You're like, show just started. What the fuck? And it keeps blowing up over and over again. It was crazy.
They keep coming. They're just doing this over and over again.
Yeah.
Just go watch The Next Generation. The answer to the question is go watch The Next Generation.
Right.
Find exactly. It's on syndication in every country. Don't worry about understanding anything about the beginning of the series or the end. Just watch it.
Yep. But yeah, they wrestle with that question of like, okay, so now that we know how this turns out, they second guess all of their decisions because they're like, do we lead into the decision by making this choice, or do we lead away from the decision by making this choice? Like when you know the outcome, you can't tell if your actions are moving towards it or away from it. with that foreknowledge. And that's like what Pike's wrestling with. Is like, okay, I know I end up in the chair. Now, how do I end up in the chair? What do I do?
I like that very, very quotable line from Return of the Jafar that I had to watch with my niece so many times. You'll be surprised what you can live through. So give that give that knowledge to someone who is piloting a ship into very dangerous situations. Captain, if we stay here, we're going to die. I hope so.
Yeah, right.
Because if we do, then that doesn't happen.
I dodge a bullet. I mean, sorry for you guys, but it kind of works out for me. I'm just saying.
It's a visual. He randomly gets teleported into an escape pod at the last second. I didn't want you to do that. I wanted to go down with the ship.
You people can't follow instructions for shit.
This is a better episode of the Orville right here that you're writing. Give him the knowledge of his demise and then let him just blow up the ship.
Dude, I'm not saying writing TV is easy, but
it's not.
Wouldn't that be the basis if you were a writer on the Orville? Wouldn't that be the basis for every episode? Is like just pick a Star Trek plot and then be like, all right, how can we make this absurd? Let's make it stupid.
Mr. McFarlane, the first episode of the new Star Trek is out. We had this idea for a parody where your character finds out what happens to him, and he decides to blow up the ship because he doesn't want to live that fate, and he wants to prove that fate is not real. But at the last second, he's going to get teleported into an escape pod. He's going to float around in space by himself for as long as he has air. That's hilarious.
Yeah,
that's just a hilarious copy. Don't even have to pay me for that one. That one's for free, guys.
Well, great. If Seth is watching, I'm sure we'll see that in season 4.
You won't. You won't, because not only. I mean, even if he is watching, he's not going to take that suggestion from me. He's going to find a way to spin that into a joke on me.
Probably a fart joke.
Yeah, I'm so done. I'm so done.
Hey, the man does do one thing right. I mean, he casts himself in these roles with these beautiful co-stars, and then writes himself into a relationship with them. I'm like, well, that's actually pretty clever.
We're talking about Adam Sandler now?
No, we're talking about Seth MacFarlane. Like every love interest he's had on that show, he doesn't cast uggos. I'm just saying.
Well, it's the Orville. It's Star Trek. You have to have co-hosts. You have to have people show up and reprise their roles. Oh, and I want to get as nerdy as possible since we've been jumping back and forth between series here. But how do you feel about the Picard timeline that they're playing with the future a little bit?
How so?
They're playing with the idea of what happens to Picard later in his life. They're doing the time travel thing because it's Star Trek. You can do the time travel thing sometimes. But I felt exceptionally nerdy when they go back in time because Q changed something, and they don't go far back enough in time, or at least address the fact that the first time Picard encounters Guinan was in an episode of the original Trek series, and it was sometime in the 20s.
Oh, are you talking about the episode where they find Data's head in a cave?
Yes.
And it's got Mark Twain in it?
Yes.
Oh, man. Yeah. See, this is where time travel stories suck because I'm guessing it somehow makes sense, and we just don't get it. If I had a problem with Picard overall, especially season 2, it's that the writing was poor because I didn't understand it. And yes, I'm actually saying that. What I mean is, like, as an audience member, I got lost. Like how it made logical sense was lost on me, and I think it was the writer's job to make it clear.
You're saying it wasn't logical?
It was not logical, no. Because you're right, you got this paradox, right? Like, wait a minute. So Whoopi Goldberg Guinan shows up in like the 1910s or whatever in San Francisco, and meets Picard there. But then you got this younger version of Guinan that's like 100 years later than that and doesn't know him. So how does that work? And then you get that whole paradox of, well, they met once in the 2020s. So then 300 years later, they could rekindle and then be sent back. So it's, yeah.
What we're going to find out is
that
the Elorians secretly go backwards in time as they get older, so that it appears that they live longer. And Guinan is actually only like 30 years old in the original Next Generation.
Dude, you should be a staff writer. I swear to God, you're coming up with better stuff than they are.
I don't want to be a staff writer. I want to be the guy who comes in when you're done with the episode, sits at the table read, and says, "You guys missed something." And I'm not saying that you have to fix it, but you should probably fix it.
Just doesn't make sense.
This is not logical. I mean, it's the fact checker in a Star Trek writer's room needs to respond with "this is not logical" to everything, right?
Oh, absolutely. I'm amazed that the fandom will do it for them. So how they can ever miss anything, I don't know.
The answer to the question is, if it's actually a problem, they will address it in season 3 by taking advantage of the fact that if it's a television show, you can do whatever you want at any time, and you just have to find a way to get there. You know, there's one thing I predicted would happen in season 2, and I don't know if you want me to say it on this stream if we're still letting people catch up on the end of Picard, but that thing could still happen in season 3. Just saying.
It's WTF Wednesday. All spoilers are fair game as far as I'm concerned.
So at the end of Picard season 1,
have the crossover from watching this show and being Star Trek nerds and haven't caught up on the show.
Well, it's a
hell of a Venn diagram.
It's a spoiler I can talk about. It's not a spoiler. It's a fan thing that I'm pretty sure is going to happen. When the ending of season 1 Picard is, and he's an android now.
Yes.
The logical solution to that problem is, well, we're going to have to bring Q in so that he can make him human again. So then when they do a season with Q, and the end of that is not, I will not live in a universe where Jean-Luc Picard is an android. We have one more season. He can still do it. I'm still going on the assumption that based on this 3-season story model that they're telling us with Picard, the end of season 3 is going to be either it was all in your head. You're a senile old man remembering a version of your future that didn't actually happen, hence the Guinan conundrum that we mentioned earlier. Or everything is going to be
disease you said you had back in the TV show. Yeah, you did, and now you're just losing your mind. Yeah.
Well, it's the size of the head, man. It's either going to be that, or it's going to be season 3. We have time travel and Q, and this has all been a farce. Because we can undo everything with time travel and with Q in Star Trek. That's why a lot of people don't like Q, I find.
Well, I mean, he's the ultimate plot device, isn't he? He's like the Infinity Stones in Marvel, where, okay, well, you've got time travel and reality bending and every other undo button you need in a plot line. It was Q.
I'm still leaning on it. That the end of all of this is going to be, and he's a human again because Q doesn't want to live in a world where he's not.
So you don't like the poetic justice that as close as he became to Data, that he ended up being an android himself?
I'm fine.
Data becoming human.
I'm fine with it. It just doesn't make sense in Star Trek, where they have not only killed this character, more than once. They've destroyed Data, the essence of Data. They've undid everything, and we can't come up with a better ending than make him an android.
Yeah, I mean we're just getting into like why I don't like Picard now. Boy, to bring the character out of mothballs after all this time and get Patrick Stewart back and pitch it like, well, I had to wait for the right story to bother coming back to this character. This was the story that got you to come back? Really? I think the story was the dump truck of money they backed up to his house. Unless there's something that was in the script that just didn't make it to the screen, because, yeah, like you said, there's a lot of stuff that just is flimsy as hell if you really want to look at it.
I keep telling myself they're doing something with it. And they're already advertising season 3 to include...
Everybody.
I do think it was all members of the original Next Gen, or what would be considered the core cast.
Yeah, they know what they're doing because, conspicuous by his absence because of his, popularity in the fandom was, Will Wheaton. They're like, oh, you're going to bring back all the Next Generation people, but Wesley's still cut out, huh?
Well, I mean...
And then, well, there's a reason why Wesley wasn't in that cast announcement for season 3.
As a fan who thinks about fan things, who says things like, wouldn't it be cool if they just did a one-off series of Captain Crusher and didn't explain it, didn't try to tie it into the continuity, just make that series, put it on TV, let me pay my $9.99 a month to watch it, and let me watch the version of Wesley that really did learn from Picard. As someone who likes to propose things like that, I am very aware that Wesley at some point left the continuity of the series and became a higher being, as it were. Mm-hmm. So when they brought him back and said, oh yeah, you know that thing that I did that people make fun of? Oh, I really did it. And we're going to tie it in and make it all make sense. There's the solution to what I consider to be my Q problem. You didn't make him a human. Oh, wait, we're doing that. We're doing that traveler thing still. Oh, we can undo all of this. None of this is set in stone now. we can bust out our time turners and just say, and it's gone.
Oh, you had to bring in time turners, man.
Come
on, this is not a Harry Potter cast,
dude. It's a you told me it was a nerd cast. I can say time turner. I can say time machine. If I say time machine, we both know I'm talking about the DeLorean. Put that on the list of things that just need to get destroyed on this show. Generally speaking, time travel in all things entertainment.
Yes.
And why Back to the Future is the best time travel. Well, yeah, that's
I have issues with Harry Potter. I know it's a fun series. I've read the books. I've seen the movies. I think it's a pretty flimsy story. I think a lot of the plot devices are just convenient. The number of times they pulled the old, you've never heard of it before, but it's totally a thing out of their butt. I'm like, come on.
Every sci-fi does that, though. Every sci-fi does that. You're never going to get 100% of the details at the very beginning.
But when you pitch it like, oh, we had this in mind all along. Really? Did you? I mean, the time turner thing, especially in Harry Potter, because you're going to tell me that Hermione's studies were the thing that were important enough to let her use it, but not the war on wizards and muggles alike by Voldemort. Like, just rewind time and kill the bastard. There's so many things that could have been undone with the time turner, and they're just like, but this girl really wanted to take some extra classes, you see?
Well, I don't want to claim to be a Potter nerd here, but if you do the thing that you just suggested, well, then the boy who lived doesn't become the boy who lived. And isn't that what the whole story's about?
Yeah, but you wouldn't need the boy who lived because he didn't need to. Well, actually, yeah, he would live with his parents. I mean, like I said, there's any number of ways you could rewrite that, but like I said,
you wouldn't have Batman in this scenario. Yeah, and Batman would have his parents.
Yeah, exactly.
Way to just redeem everybody right there, AJ. Well done. Ooh, your focus is having some struggle bus tonight.
Yeah, there we go. Sorry about that.
Hey, everybody's looking at
half the stuff we meant to because we just keep getting on tangents.
Dude, if this is the show, I'm down. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, we were talking about how to like structure a show and if we were going to have an outline or something. What the hell would this outline be?
This outline would be a free-form, nerdy discussion that would get turned into bullet points that you use for the main show later on of the Nerf Herder Council. That's what.
So this is just.
That's what.
This is like
that's the shtick, right?
This is the nano brew next to the micro brew. So we just like test out ideas on here, and if they've got legs, then we just take them over to the bigger production. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, sure. That's a thing. I mean, unless you want to start busting out your bullet points. And we can only talk about these things on our live stream where I build Lego. I'm building the script, as it were.
Right.
Real metal shit.
we are coming into a bit of a time crunch, though. I don't know how much longer you want to be at this, but I've got a big old pile of pieces here still. Dude. So this might not get done. I was actually just going to complete these chunks and call it.
Yeah.
Because this is fiddly and tired, man. There's a lot of stuff going on here.
How much you got left here? We got 2 more pages on this thing? You're on page 208.
There's 330.
Oh man.
But it's that way because
is this the life of a Lego fan?
Well, they have you build one leg at a time. I'm just mirroring everything so I can build 2 legs at a time. So there's only 50 steps remaining. It's not nearly as bad as
way to do it the most efficient way possible.
It's still too long. Too long for this stream, at least. But, okay, so we were talking earlier, though. So have we settled the whole where do you start with Star Trek?
I think we did. I think we both agreed start with The Next Generation, and I gave everyone the out of if all you have is the movies, start with First Contact.
Yes, I think that's all right. I mean, if you're going to go movies, though, I think you can really start from... you can endure the motion picture if you want, but Wrath of Khan is really, a good starting point. That's your submarines in space right there.
I really do think Wrath of Khan is something you have to know who Khan is for that to matter as much as it does to us all. It is a great story about revenge, and I think that it's one of the definitive revenge stories in sci-fi. But I think for that to really fit, for you to really know why that guy is trying to kill Kirk, it's something that is more serious when you see how lighthearted his appearance in the original series is. Don't get me wrong. That movie came out long after that series ended. And that was a big deal for classic fans of the show. It's been 10 years and Khan is here. But I think that's one you really do have to know what's happening.
See, I don't think so, because I wasn't that versed in the original series. Like, it was on every Saturday night when I was growing up as a kid. Not in the 60s. I'm not that old. But, in syndication. And it was a thing. I never actually saw the original episode before seeing The Wrath of Khan. And, it worked for me just fine. I think they explained the character and his motivations just fine in that movie. And actually, that episode was not very good.
It's not a good episode, but you got to know why the dude's mad at him.
But they explain that.
Yeah.
And if you haven't seen the episode, you also get around a plot hole. Can't get around camera focus, but come on. Wow. There we go. Okay. But yeah, do you know the famous plot hole?
I admit I have sat through the original series multiple times, but I cannot recall every detail of the plots like I can with Next Gen, or I seem to be able to do with Next Gen.
The problem with The Wrath of Khan is that Chekhov is the guy who shits his pants when he realizes who's in that container. Chekhov
That's right.
was not on the series when the episode took place.
That's right. You can justify that away by Kirk put him in a room when he came on board and said, I want you to watch everything on here so you know all about everything.
Unfortunately, though, there's a line by Khan in Wrath of Khan that says, but I never forget a face. Implying they met in person in the original series, which never happened.
Which did not happen. That's 100% correct. That's a huge plot hole that only we care about, and by we I mean all the fans.
I didn't know it was a plot hole until someone pointed it out to me, because I didn't pay that much attention to the show because I saw it after the movie.
We all look back on the show as a whole as I think Star Trek is something generally experienced in syndication. Most people have not truly sat down and watched it all in order. There's been more opportunity to watch it just as is, as its episode of the week. And I think the original series was more episode of the week than even Next Gen. And Next Gen becomes episode of the week, which is fine when your TV show is episodic and it's submarines in space and we're telling stories about real world problems by giving them different names and different words, because we're all learning a lesson from this futuristic vision of everything. It's always going to make me laugh when those plot holes sneak in, but I think Trek gets away with it because the original Trek is like it's everything that happened prior to the films. You can kind of throw in a mixer and it'll be fine. There's not a lot that happens that you have to see in order.
It's almost part of the DNA of the franchise. You know, the utter absurdity, especially of the original series. You're like, oh, we traveled to the edge of the galaxy this week. How? That should have taken you like years, if not decades. Doesn't matter. It worked for the story. Shut up.
Wormholes are a thing. We haven't found them yet. We don't know what they are.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
That's a concept I want to see.
On that, then the problem is with you, the audience, not with us, the writers. Stop it.
So who did Wormholes the best? Star Trek, Stargate, or Sliders?
Oof, man. Okay. You might have out-nerded me here because I don't have a lot on Sliders or Stargate. I've seen some episodes of both, but not nearly enough to know what the hell I'm talking about with this question. I do like Sliders for the whole like quantum leap aspect of.
Oh, I forgot Quantum Leap. Quantum Leap. There's 4 options now.
Yeah. I like the whole like, just trying to get home. Like they're not really trying to like solve anything. They're just like, damn it. We just want to go home.
What?
So I like that. The whole Stargate thing, though. The Stargate is like, I don't know. That one kind of reminds me of like, I'd call that like Deep Space Nine-ish.
I do agree as a fan. It's a series that I remember for the film that I love because of the film. The TV show was absolutely an improvement on those ideas because it spent a lot more time with them. They got a little ridiculous when they went universal, but it's an overall underrated series for me. I do think that if not today, when there should be more Stargate films. I think it's something that we can spend more time with, and tell better stories, especially serialized the way we do series now, like The Mandalorian, etc., where we spend 8 or 9 or 10 episodes with this idea instead of an hour and 30 minutes.
Can we get MacGyver back for it?
I don't know how much he charges.
I mean, as long as we got Richard Dean Anderson on board. But I want him as MacGyver. I don't want him as, whoever his Stargate thing was.
just have MacGyver in the universe.
Right.
It's a totally different movie now when we go through this giant ring in the floor and end up in what appears to be ancient Egypt. MacGyver's going to get us home.
Yeah.
And he's going to have a montage and a theme of how to do it. He's going to somehow build a spaceship out of sandstone, and that's going to be a film that we all buy into because it's MacGyver. Didn't watch a lot of MacGyver, but I appreciate the concept of it'll be fine. This is fine.
Yeah.
Everything is on fire, and we're going to get out of it.
No, you're right. The Stargate show, there wasn't a whole lot of depth to the ideas in the movie, but then they really fleshed it out in the series, which was cool. Complete with like bringing back the a couple of the movie characters to create that continuity. But man, how long did that run for anyway? That was one of those things I was like, Jesus, is that still on?
Decades. And by decades, I mean many years. But they also did. They did multiple series though. They did Atlantis. They did whatever last series was. Like they took that idea of it's a series of tubes, and it goes to all the farthest reaches of the galaxy, and we can this ancient, much like the prophets in Deep Space Nine, this ancient race and civilization of very smart aliens created a system by which we can travel anywhere as quickly as possible, and our show is about going to those places and dealing with a problem and then coming back. It's kind of the same thing that Deep Space Nine did with that wormhole, except that only goes to one place. Oh man, that show! I thought I wouldn't have time to say it, but I'm going to go ahead and take advantage of it while you're building those legs. Deep Space Nine gets weird.
It does get weird, but it's so good.
They use that foundation to just make an entire series where the moral question is kind of about religion as a whole, and it's not always criticizing it, but it picks on the people that use it as a way to control others, I think.
Yeah, that show definitely has a lot to say.
Yeah, but it very quickly stops being Star Trek and starts being weird. If you can call Star Trek weird and get away with it.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of Deep Space Nine. I mean, you asked me like the best series or favorite series. It's as far as the one that holds up the best for the longest. Yeah, think about it was the first one to go serialized, right? So especially in this era of binging, it works so well because they had this in mind. They had these 3-4 part episodes and everything.
You say that, and despite how weird the later seasons get, you're right. Especially at the beginning of the series, they had to find their footing and not copy the next gen formula, because Deep Space Nine, for all of its positives, is not the same feel. But they didn't know that when they first started. It has a different vibe to it that works. In those two series happen at the same time. They happen in the same timeline. It's the same universe, same everything. But there's a difference in how you present that and make it entertaining. It's like by putting it in a space station that doesn't move, they had to spend more time on those stories. Somehow that makes sense, even though I just made it sound convoluted and ridiculous.
Yeah, and in a lot of cases, they didn't have everything hammered out from the start. I mean, you can have a rough outline, but then you kind of see where it goes and you see what works and what doesn't. But the Dominion is the big threat throughout the series, right?
Yes.
It's mentioned in season 2, and you don't see them until the end of 3, I think, or something. It's almost like the White Walkers in Game of Thrones, where it's just this shadowy threat in the background, and they don't really pull the trigger on it for so long that the payoff is great. Just to finally know what the hell they're talking about.
Right. You can do a big bad not well. I had to be careful the way I said that. It is absolutely a trope to mention a big bad and not delve into it until they show up. But
or just retcon it. Have them show up and be like, "Oh yeah, all that stuff you saw before, that was me."
Yeah, that's you have to be afraid of a big bad in order for it to be effective that way. Just if you're gonna it's a good word. The Dominion, they talk about it like it's a real threat, and it feels like a threat because we're on a space station. We don't move. It's not like the Enterprise that we can just run away or the Romulans are in the neutral zone again, and we're gonna go square off and be like, what are you doing in the neutral zone? What are you doing in the neutral zone? They do that all the time.
You go home. I'll go home too. Yeah.
The one guy that has one of the best deadpan looks I've ever seen. I need to look up who that actor is, but he's the much taller and skinnier Romulan they encounter, who just has the deadpan look down his eyes, who speaks like this in a robotic voice. He judges them very negatively for being in the neutral zone. That guy's so cool. Just has one of the best looks for an alien that really doesn't like you.
I'm confusing with somebody else. I was about to say Iggy Pop, but no, he was a guest star on Deep Space Nine playing a different alien.
Exactly. Dude, that's where you drop the ball with the Kelvin timeline. Don't get me wrong. Benedict Cumberbatch did a good job, but just get Iggy Pop to play Khan.
No, okay. You've had some good rewrites tonight. Here's my rewrite. Here's my rewrite for that atrocity that's Star Trek Into Darkness. I'm in witness protection, apparently. There we go. So the problem with Into Darkness with anyone playing Khan is that based on when the timeline splits, it's long after Khan, the guy Ricardo Montalban played, was created. Because he was created in the eugenics wars in the 1990s. And even if you want to like age that up a little bit, and they're saying now it's like the 20-somethings, sometime in this century. So even in the Kelvin timeline, they should be encountering Ricardo Montalban. So that's just a stupid recast.
Well,
so here's what you do. You just say that instead of encountering Khan, they thought out one of his followers instead. By the way, I know we just dropped the, I don't know why we just dropped the cam from the build, but.
So that's an interesting turn of events.
I'm going to try again here. Okay, so this is why I actually use a wired connection for podcasting, because my phone obviously can't, and that is my camera for the build. I think my Wi-Fi router just reset or something. So
if that was true, we would both be you would have lost all cameras.
No, because I have an Ethernet cable into my laptop.
That's
okay.
I mean, I know somebody who can help you with that. I just can't tell you who it is right now. There it is. There it is.
We're back.
Oh.
Yeah, it just gets tired every once in a while. Now I just have to mute this. There we go.
Booyah.
Oh, well. So anyway, yeah, so if they just said it was like one of Khan's followers instead of Khan himself, then there you go. Simple rewrite to Into Darkness that would have fixed the plot hole. And the recast.
I will only counter that by saying if you needed proof that JJ does reboots almost literally, anybody who didn't think that was Khan wasn't paying attention to anything that happens in the trailer, because, yeah, it was fine. I don't hate those reboots. I just don't consider them part of the original canon, and that allows me to see it for what it is. It's like, oh, it's just a movie. It's just a movie.
To go and tell, I thought the first one was good. I liked it. I liked that it was forging its own direction. You know, it acknowledged like, hey, it's a split in the timeline, and now we're going to go do our own stuff. Boy, I don't know what's going on with my Wi-Fi tonight, but it's hard to build Lego live on camera when you can't hold an internet connection.
That it's not thermal throttled, is it? That's a word that people use when the phone gets too hot and stops doing the thing.
It seems to be okay. I don't know, but we'll come back to that anyway. I'm hunting for pieces. It's not exactly riveting. But once they established their new continuity in the first movie, why didn't they just go and tell their own stories from that point on instead of absolutely calling back to the original continuity in the second one? Like they had anywhere they wanted to go, and they decided to dive deeper into the lore they just separated themselves from.
The answer to your question is a truck filled with money. Leonard Nimoy. That is the only answer to the question that you need, and that's the answer.
Well, and I liked having Nimoy in it. I think pulling him across continuities was a fun way to like bring in a character without wrecking it. But
yeah.
I don't know. Like I said, not overall a fan of the Kelvin universe, especially because that's where we got the damn lens flares from. By the way, clearly this cam connection is not going to hold up, so we're probably going to have
the camera might be calling it for you.
Right. I'm just trying to get to a good stopping point here. Like I know this is the poor guy's tired or something. Also, you see how fragile this stuff is. The whole thing's coming apart here. So we're just going to build this in 2 parts and put it together later. Yep, it ducked out again. Okay. So we are definitely going to have to finish this build at another time. But we can at least finish our point and then call it a night. It's been a 2-hour stream. I'd say we put in our time.
Absolutely. It was a cool stream too. I hope you want me to come back and do this again because your show's pretty nerdy, but it's not nerdy enough. There's not enough Trek on your show.
No, not nearly enough. I mean, clearly we've got plenty to talk about here. We just gotta stay on track a little bit more because we can't cover the entire continuity in one episode.
Spoken like a true nerf herder.
Damn right, man. Stay on target. That's our motto. We never do.
Shut the fuck up, Tony. You're out of your element.
But yeah, so are you a Paramount Plus subscriber? Do you keep up on the latest Trek, or do you have to wait for it to come out somewhere else?
I have gotten into the habit of waiting until stuff comes out in its entirety and then binging it. I'll pay the bill. I'll pay the $10. And it's a precedence that Netflix has set for me, where I'm just going to be able to sit and watch the show at my own leisure. I don't know yet how I feel about streaming services starting to do the traditional television thing, where they release stuff in pieces again. I'm really of the opinion that you don't have to do that anymore. I feel like I have some insight into why they do it that way, and it's not that hard to figure out if you want to just take a guess, but it's something that I feel like the one thing that the people who watch the shows want is just access to the stuff. I don't think you're keeping my suspense up anymore. Maybe this is true for different types of viewers, but I don't think you're keeping my suspense up anymore by releasing it every week, and then I have to spend an hour every week for 3 months watching the latest episode of The Mandalorian. I don't feel like I'm in more suspense waiting for that finale than I would be if you just put it all up and let me watch it all at my leisure. I'd be just as much in suspense. For me, it doesn't. The old school model of, well, that was really cool, I can't wait to see what happens next. I don't have that same reaction to stuff anymore. And I don't think it's only because of Netflix, but I think this idea of here's a serialized story that you can just watch at your own leisure, that's all anybody wants. So Paramount Plus, I think it's another streaming service. I think we have a catalog of things, and we're charging monthly dollars for people to watch that catalog of things, and you can't watch it anywhere else. I would much rather give one person, I'll say $50 for the sake of the argument. Okay. If I had access to everything, versus having to play the shuffle game of logging into 5 or 6 services and try to find the thing I want to see before I eventually pull my phone out, figure out it's on a different service, and I have to go log into that one. Maybe that's just a me problem, but I think that's what most people are just tired of. It's like, can I call it a hub? Can I just have a hub? That's all we want. I just want to watch the show.
Yeah, it's ridiculous that we got to go to like the actual devices themselves. Like, you've got your Amazon Fire Stick, and you just tell Alexa what show you're looking for, and then she goes, "Oh, it's on this one." Okay. Like, yeah, it would be nice if the service itself did that. Kind of like cable used to do, where it used to be one-stop shop for all of your entertainment needs.
Still does.
But now the studios want that cut directly, so I see what's going on there.
I think we all see it, and at the end of the day, what we want is I have this computer in my hand. This is not a phone. This is a computer that makes phone calls. On it, I can quickly scroll through content and find a thing that I want to watch. I just want to hit that button and have it appear. I don't want to have to play the shell game of, did you log in to all 12 of your streaming services this week because we want that money directly? Someone will figure it out, and I'm waiting for that day. But the actual question that you asked me, I don't subscribe to Paramount Plus all the time because I'm tired of subscribing to multiple services that I don't watch. The day that Netflix became a content creator and every recommendation was a Netflix created film or show, I said, well, you're not a curator anymore. I'm paying you to be a curator. I can pay somebody else to be a curator. So I'm fine with jumping in and jumping out when it's out there. With Star Trek, I'm letting a couple episodes come out, and then I'm re-upping. Basically, I think I'm paying for a month when there's a month to watch, and then I'll shoot through those 3 or 4 episodes. Then I'll move on to the next thing. Make too many podcasts, man, to sit down and watch the streaming every week. I wish I could. Wish I had a show where we talk about.
It's ridiculous,
right?
It is ridiculous. I totally get you on that.
14 albums. Cannibal Corpse had a lot of records.
They went back to the drip feed, though. They went back to the drip feed model because for people like you that just, I'll just binge it when it comes out in its entirety. Well, then they got 1 month of your subscription and not, 4. So I get the business model. I get the reason for it, but yeah, we were spoiled by Netflix being the first and doing the whole like here's everything at once routine. We're like, oh, this is fantastic. But yeah, it doesn't really work for new content nearly as well for their business model.
And I think most people that watch TV really do just sit there and watch whatever's on. I mean, the majority of people that I know, if they have the TV on, they have it on a channel that they like, and whatever shows up, they'll watch it. I think it's mostly, and it's not an age thing. It's a mentality thing. But, generally the younger crowd, like my niece and her friends, they want the YouTube experience. They just want to find the thing that they want to watch it, and that's the end of their day. It's something I think it'll always change with time, because as soon as you overwhelm me with everything, I don't have enough time to watch everything. So the drip feed kind of works when you have a lot of stuff in the works, because you can move between shows. But I think that's another thing that some people are tired of too. I know there's times I don't want to watch the 5 shows in the same continuity. It's like watching 5 Marvel movies to get to the big team up. It's like, well, sometimes you just want to watch the team up.
Yeah, like Kevin Feige was just talking about that this week, actually, because they're doing upfronts, I guess they call them. There's something for to get advertisers on board. And he's like, yeah, now you're really starting to see that synergy, where the shows play into the movies and vice versa. I'm like, yeah, that's the problem. Like I had my brother, not my brother John, but our other brother Derek, and my mother.
You caught me. I almost hit the button.
He's seen it too, so you can have him chime in what he thinks about Doctor Strange too. But
What the fuck is this?
Right? I had to like explain what happened in WandaVision and Loki and all this other like and What If, like 3 different Marvel Plus shows or Disney Plus shows for their Marvel universe. Boy, I just lost all diction tonight. But
he's not even drinking, shows, everyone.
Right? All 3 of those shows come into play in this movie to explain like some major plot points. I'm like, that's a lot of overhead if you're just trying to sell a movie ticket, man. And I don't think you're going to gain more viewers for Disney Plus. I think you're going to piss them off that they can't jump in and out. They have to like consume it all or be lost. There is
a point where you have to look at your audience, and I'm sure this is how the creative controllers think. Who is the majority of our audience, and where do they spend their time? How do we get them to spend all of their time in that, wherever that is, whether that's online streaming, if that's in the movie theater? How do we get them to spend all of their time with our stuff? And there is a threshold for what most fans of sci-fi and nerdy stuff, yeah, we like to obsess about the things we like, but there is always going to be a threshold for when too much, I can't keep up, I'm done.
Yes.
There is a point where I've always been a wrestling fan. There is a point where I stopped watching the big name in the US because you want me to subscribe to your network. You want me to watch 9 hours of network television wrestling matches. You want me to then go to the streaming service and watch 9 hours of other stuff that has something to do with this. And if I don't, you're not going to explain to me why that guy's mad at that guy anymore.
Right.
That is the point I checked out of that particular it was WWE. I don't need to hide. Right. That's the point I checked out on them, because now people are fighting. And no, I don't think you have to explain all the time in wrestling why people are mad at each other. But when you reference back to it like it's something I should have known, now you're wasting my time. Mm-hmm. Because there is a point where you have to just let me watch the show. You know, the advertising crawl that you see, you watch Family Guy, and in the middle of the show, the crawl shows up and says, you should watch American Dad. Then you watch American Dad, and it tells you to watch Family Guy. There is a point, there is a feedback loop where you're wasting your fans' time. And it drives me absolutely insane because you have actually done too much.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think... like you said, at some point you've got to say we've reached a saturation point to where it's unsustainable and it's costing you viewers instead of adding to them. I absolutely get that, and living through recaps is a stupid way to call yourself a fan of something, but like your wrestling example is perfect. I watch 20-minute recaps of the TV shows to stay up on stuff so I can occasionally watch a pay-per-view and not be lost. Like, that's not really what they're going for, but it's just exhaustion. It's overload.
Right. Dude, talk about exhaustion and hitting your limit. I'm about to check out like your camera did. This has been a badass stream.
What I'm fiddling with is just getting the stupid head attached to the body.
Yeah, look at this.
Yeah, that's all that just for that. Just to say, yeah, it's connected now.
Well done, AJ.
Put the legs on later.
Well, cool, man. This was fun. This was awesome. I want to do this again if you invite me back.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I'll be a little bit busy for the next week and a half, but after that,
yeah. Not going to say why, but it might have to do with a big celebration.
Exactly. We didn't even get on a couple of the topics, like celebration in particular, that I wanted to talk about. So, yeah, anytime you want to come back on, man, all good. We do the WTF Friday, the last Friday of every month as scheduled, except for this month because I'll be at Celebration. But that one is a bare minimum. And then any other time you feel like hanging out, man, you let me know.
Anytime. This is awesome.
So if anyone likes hearing you talk more than me, where can they hear you talk more?
You can subscribe to all the discography discussion podcasts at discussmetal.com. We talk about all things metal, all things heavy, all things awesome. We do Discuss Metal Live, where we get together and talk about all the non-discography stuff. But if you are a fan of metal bands and you say to yourself, why hasn't anyone sat down and talked about this entire discography? We are the podcast for you. And you can find us everywhere you listen to podcasts, much like the Nerf Herder Council. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and steal my own plug and say, if you have an Amazon Echo or a Google Home, you have no excuse. Ask it to play the Nerf Herder Council. Ask it to play discography discussion. And it will.
That's a thing, really?
Yeah.
I didn't even know that. Holy crap. Okay. Yeah, go do that, guys. Listen to your podcast by bossing around your smart speakers.
Do it. They're inanimate objects. They respond well to yelling. It's the only electronic in your house that will actually respond to yelling at it.
It'll also respond to compliments, too. It's very weird, but you can do that if you want.
It's true.
My mother's so cute. She always thanks her Alexa for doing stuff.
Hey, she's got class.
Mm-hmm.
She's going to be the one, looking at all of us down her nose like, how dare you treat Data like a non-creature? He is a real person. He is a sentient being.
So when is your next show?
Our shows post every Sunday and around 5 or 6, but we've got 273 episodes, and right now we're in the middle of New Metal May 2022. So wherever you listen to podcasts, just scroll the list. I guarantee there's something in there that you either love or have not yet learned to love, because we love all of it.
Fantastic. All right, and you can find us at nerfherdercouncil.com on all the social media platforms. You're probably watching us on one of those right now, or you can get the audio version, like Dan said. Tell your Alexa or your Google Assistant or your Siri to play the Nerf Herder Council podcast. You'll find us on there, Stitcher, Spreaker, all that other stuff. You can find our show on Twitter at NHC Podcast. You can also find me at Drake Adams 579. And Joe, what's your handle?
Discuss Metal Joe on Twitter.
All right, fantastic. So you guys have a great time. We'll be doing probably some drunken updates from Celebration, and otherwise we will see you in June. Have a good night, everybody.